get more. There's a poverty index, especially in the marginalized counties. They've said, no, we are the ones who need to be given a helping hand up. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, if you follow the framework that I was trying to introduce a little earlier in terms of what led us to the transfer variables, we wanted to get specific in terms of the sectors that have been devolved, so that other stakeholders can actually hold the governors accountable in terms of how they spend the money. And in those sectors, like if you take agriculture, for example, the focus there will be people who are farming. So we decided that the proportion of people who are rural in Kenya, that's where we find the farmers, basically. Now, on health, there were things like people who are not covered through insurance. People don't have health insurance. For water, it's a question of people don't have access to clean water for drinking. And then in urban areas, because we have a component on urban services, we're asking the proportion of Kenyans who live in urban areas, because actually urban areas are kind of struggling at the moment, because they face services that are peculiar to urban areas. And those include things like, you know, sewage, garbage collection, and there's also a higher density of transportation in those kind of places. There's also a need actually to begin to plan our urban areas, because if you don't, there'll be problems. But again, it's a question of, in terms of the parameter that becomes a transfer parameter, we were asking, what's the relevant population here? So that now we can hold the governors accountable.
But you're doing this ahead of the census. Then what happens after we have new numbers? Shouldn't it have come at that point?
You see, we don't, I mean, we have constitutional deadlines that we must meet. And actually, we don't generate data as a commission. We go by the data that's available from credible institutions like the National Bureau of Standards. So at the time when we released our proposal, that's the data that we used. But we realized that there will be some other census. And when that happens, of course, we're going to use, apply the new data. It doesn't change the framework. And that new data would tell us, you know, by the way, in the next 30 years, most of us will be living in towns. Okay. So what we expect is a crawling towards that figure in the next 5 years. So the proportion of people living in urban areas will be higher. Okay. And therefore the transfer to urban areas will be also higher. On that basis. Right. But there are other things like the balanced growth component. Remember, we have 3 buckets actually. We have a bucket on service enhancements, and then a bucket on balanced development. This second bucket is about the poor in the country, and there's a bit of a change in terms of what we're using now relative to what was being used in the past, because the measures were completely different. I mean, we have a measure now which tells us the head count in terms of the people who are poor, which is better than when you're talking about the gap, the gap.
Okay. Yes. Had you finished the point?
So the point is that in the end, you know, the services are 2 people. I mean, and that's why in our proposal we also indicate the per capita outcomes, because you see it translates to what people are being given service. You don't service animals. It's people. It's also not just land per se. It ultimately translates into service to people.
All right. Mheshimiwa Mbarire, to the point that the Secretary General spoke about devolution, and that some of the pronouncements coming from the leaders from Mount Kenya is because of what they've been used to, that instead now focusing on this structure of governance that's in place that should bring services closer to the people, they're still going back to national government. Do you agree that there's still...
You know, Sophie, I think that's not true. We are all aware that there's a new constitution that came up with the national and the devolved governments. But I don't know why it is such a big deal when leaders from Mount Kenya region do lobby for projects in their region. Sophie, if you can jog your memory a bit, we had the president meeting leaders from different parts of the country. We've seen the western leadership meet the president and talk about development in Western Kenya. They talked about their sugar. They talked about many other things. We've seen coast leaders meet the president as early as last week. Again, they went and discussed issues affecting their region with their president. We've seen leaders from, Northeastern meet the president. But I don't know why people think then we shouldn't speak. We should actually sit back and let everybody else speak for their people, and then we should keep quiet because we come from Central Kenya, and that is where the president comes from.
And you're in the same party?
And we're in the same party, so we shouldn't talk. And you know what? The Mwananchi on the ground expects us to speak. And as I said, because development is insatiable, we will continue asking, not because nothing has been done in the past, but because people keep asking for more and more and more. Mm-hmm. And it is a role of the elected leaders from a particular area, a constituency, a county, to bring those matters where they ought to go. Mm-hmm. But let me also say that we are not blind of the fact that we have governors who also get quite substantial amounts of money. But the challenge is that if you go to Schedule 4, there are clear roles of the national government and very clear roles of the county government. But if you go down to the ground and ask Mwananchi, which is the county road, which is the national road, they don't know. Mm-hmm. So again, we need to begin to be very open to Mwananchi so that they can be able to know which is the role of the governor and what they're expected to do with the money they receive, mm-hmm. and which is the role of the national government, so that we also don't have confusion on the roles of the two levels of government.
Yeah.
But that's not to say we shouldn't speak out. That's not to say we shouldn't speak on behalf of the people we represent, because they expect exactly that from their leaders. And let me repeat this. This is not to say nothing has been done. Something has been done.
But more needs to be done.
A lot has been done.
Right.
But by the very nature of development, people expect more as we move on. That pressure mounts from the MCA to the MP, to the governor, coming all the way to the president.
So, Sifuna, let me put this to you. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but that I was talking about dividing the cake. There's the issue of structures. So, for instance, when I think it was Senate that was probing the medical equipment services in Kakamega County, and the issue that came out is that they, as a county, bought themselves a CT machine for about 55 million. But under the MES, the medical equipment services, that they are now, quote unquote, not forced, but have to get and acquire one, it was 3 times that amount. So that they already have one, they now have this other one. So that there's also a breakdown in structures. We're talking about let's develop. If the systems and how we're going about that development is not clearly thought out, then we're shooting ourselves in the foot, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. And for us, I think we were very, very clear on that MES when it was introduced, that it would have been better if the counties themselves were to identify what is a priority for them in the hospitals that they have. But I feel like I've been misunderstood somewhere. I'm not saying that people from Central Kenya should stop lobbying for development projects. That's not what we are saying. And in fact, what Moses Kuria was doing was not lobbying for projects. You know, we have to be honest. We have to be very honest as a country. That's not what he was doing. He wants to misrepresent facts on whether indeed other areas are getting more favorable treatment than the people of Central Kenya. I personally, sitting here, I am ready to accept that if we can accept or we can agree with the people from Mount Kenya, that if we can raise the standard of infrastructure in all the other counties to just reach where Kiambu is, we start there first of all. You know what you're doing is akin to somebody who has already served the main meal, and now you're saying you want more, you just want dessert. Yet there are people who have not even eaten. That's what you are doing, because you want dessert, you want to add cake and fruits, and people have not even eaten the ugali. What we are saying is, we are not saying that Central Kenya does not deserve. In fact, we have been clear that each and every person who pays taxes in this country is somebody who is entitled to receive the services from government. I like what my brother here is trying to say, because we also need to strike a balance between population and the services in the county. Population is also a factor of the quality of life in a place, because really, if you have no access to healthcare, you have no access to education,
Water.
you have no access to water. Somebody who has to walk 50 kilometers to get water. And for us, like where I come from, we are blessed. Water just comes out of the ground without us doing anything. So for me, whose water comes from the ground, to insist that I want piped water, and yet there are people in Makueni and other places who have to walk kilometers to get water. Is that fair? All we are saying is that there needs to be fairness. There needs to be fairness. And Mheshimiwa, I can guarantee you that development in Kwale is not for the people of Kwale only. Because we all go there. This country is open for all of us. We should be able to do business in Kwale. Even for you, if you wanted to invest in Turkana, for instance, you want to do a transport business. Because we cannot all just do transport in Nairobi. Yeah? At a certain point, the market will be saturated. On which roads are you going to run transport in Garissa, in Bungoma, for instance? So we need this country to be evenly developed so that we can all feel, because we all pay taxes. And for us, all we need is honesty. Mheshimiwa, where do you get the number that Central Kenya contributes 60% of the GDP? You make the rest of the country feel like we are dead weight, like we don't add anything. And yet the number is not factual. The truth of the matter is we all contribute. And when we sit down with the president and the leadership of the country to talk about our sugar, and it is also something that we can claim that our issues are not addressed as quickly as they should. How long have we been talking about sugar?
Prof, as we...
May I say something?
Briefly, yes,
Yeah, you know, Sifuna, you can only talk about a place that you're familiar with. Many people think the whole of Mount Kenya region is probably as good as the Kiambu you see when you get up to Kiambu town and maybe a few kilometers in. I will tell you the example of Embu County. Embu County, there's Mbere North and Mbere South that is still part of Embu County, but doesn't have as much water as you'd find in Ronyenjes or Manyata.
Right.
Now, will you tell the member of parliament on Mbere North, on Mbere South, or Tigania, or Ndeia in Kiambu to shut up? Because Kiambu is developed, and yet there's that section of Kiambu that is not developed.
All right.
I think it's good to be fair that everybody
We have not
has
said
special
shut up.
needs,
Yeah.
or not to even request for development, because after all, the whole of Kiambu is developed. I think we have to agree that
Yes.
even within those areas you perceive to be developed, there are pockets
that are not developed.
that are not developed.
Prof, let me bring this to you. I've seen your proposals, and there's a recommendation to increase funding to counties from 314 billion to 336 billion. And there's been concern around the audited accounts that determine the money that's going down are always backdated, so it's not current. There's an issue of that backlog going on. Is it an issue that concerns you, so that this amount could be so much higher if we were keeping up to date with those accounts?
It does, but actually the 336 billion, you know, the non-audited accounts only make sense when you begin computing the proportions, because then it looks like the 336 billion is a lot of money relative to, you know, the audited accounts. But those audits were done, I think the last audited accounts we have on record is that 2014, 2015. So there's a big lag. But in terms of the actual allocation, that's based on the forecast, the current forecast, yeah. It's just a proportion that no longer makes sense.
Right.
Because if you compare the forecast with the 336 billion, it's probably something like maybe very close to the base, which is 15%, or even be less. And you know, it's an issue because you know, the quantum that is shared part determines to what extent we are chasing in devolution. Now, we were having a chat with Mheshimiwa a little earlier. You see, the figures that we have suggest that if you compare the proportion that goes to the counties relative to GDP, it's just shrinking. It's just shrinking. And therein is the story about our commitment to devolution.
Yeah. So what is your final word to those Kenyans watching tonight with this new formula? Some probably have not read about it, understand it, but what for you is the take-home that you'd want everybody there to know as you go about this formula and how revenue will be allocated?
First of all, the formula is, what we release is kind of provisional, it's a draft.
Yeah.
And the intention was that Kenyans can actually give us some constructive suggestions That wind is still there, but it won't be there for very long. But even if you don't change it, even if we stay with the draft the way it is, you know, it makes for stability. As I mentioned earlier, we managed to sort of deal with the spread in terms of the per capita outcomes. And actually, we are sort of giving, I think the senators mainly, some kind of weapon they can use in terms of confronting the county managers in terms of what's going on, where's the money going,
right?
That kind of a thing. So I think it's an improvement from what we had as a second formula, okay, in our view as a commission. Right.
I'll come to you finally as well, Mheshimiwa, because there's somebody here who had written a question. I'm trying to go. Here we go. Eventa says, does it bother you that the Deputy President makes it look like he's gifting people in different parts of the country launching projects? We pay taxes. We don't need them to be launched, so he should not make it look like he's giving out goodies.
I think that is not what the Deputy President does. He's not gifting. He's bringing development to people, to Kenyans, in order for us to be able to fulfill the pledges that Jubilee government give to its people, to the people of Kenya. So I don't think it's a gift, and I don't think he's ever called it a gift whenever he does.
It's not politicized, I guess, is the gist of the question, that it's made to look as if, you know, I'm the person doing this for you, and you've paid taxpayers.
It's also wrong to think that it is to personalize it to the Deputy President, because this is a Jubilee pledge that is being implemented, and therefore look at it as the Jubilee government doing its work. And the Jubilee government has the head of state, who is the president, and the deputy. Right. So I think it is wrong for people to begin to personalize development to particular individuals, because it comes from one government.
What do you think?
I think Mheshimiwa Mbarire knows what is going on, but she doesn't want to say it. But for me, I am free to say it.
Please.
The fact of the matter is that it is made to look like it is only the DP who has been able to do these things. In fact, for me, I have said that if I were president, I would ban this thing of launching projects. You don't need to launch a project. When Kenyans pay taxes, we don't call you, the media, to show that now we are paying taxes. Now today we are expecting that we will get them. No. So why would you come back to build a road and then you call us all there, make noise, say it is only me? And by the way, the Deputy President went to Trans Nzoia one time, and he told the people of Saboti constituency, where my member of parliament is Caleb Amisi, that huyo mbunge wenu asipowacha siasa ya tialala, after he has gifted quote unquote, I think it was TVETs in some of those constituencies for whose members of parliament are pliant. He said, for Saboti constituency, until your MP starts playing ball, you will not see this development. As if it is something that he dishes from his pocket. So we want to be very clear that we don't need this type of politics, and we need to be very, very honest with each other. It doesn't cost much, to be honest, because Kenyans have eyes and they have ears and they know what is going on. Finally, Sophia, there is that young man that you showed on your news.
Eliud, I believe.
Yes, I believe that I can trust KTN with a token of 10,000 shillings that can be transmitted through your reporter there, Elvis Kosgei. And I'm sure the other Waheshimiwa, the Mama County for what is it called? Uasin Gishu. I will speak to her as well. Mheshimiwa Murkomen, I know is watching. We should get that young boy into school so that he doesn't waste his life the way it's going.
Sawa sawa. Thank you all for being with us tonight. Professor Peter Kimuyu, he's a commissioner with the Commission of Revenue Allocation, CRA. Cecily Mbarire is the Deputy Majority Chief Whip, also the convener of the Mount Kenya Parliamentary Caucus, and Edwin Sifuna, the Secretary General, ODM. We thank you for being with us tonight here on Checkpoint. And we thank you for watching. Stay with us. We're taking a break. I'll be back with the sports news.